Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays with Sam, the Miracle Man. You'll join a captivating and transformational podcast where we'll explore the extraordinary journey of Sam, a man who overcame all odds to reclaim his life and health. Each Wednesday, Sam shares his inspiring stories of growth, health, and his journey to find wellness through self-care, mental well-being, and physical rejuvenation. We'll also have dynamic and interesting interviews with professionals in health, fitness, spirituality, and personal growth to help you on your journey to uncover the true secrets to living your best life. With just a click, you can subscribe. We will welcome you every week. Now here's your amazing host, Sam.
Hey, Miracle Makers. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Wednesdays with Sam, the Miracle Man. So I hope you're feeling well and really enjoying this moment. I have a special guest this week, Jenn Bieri from Jenn on the Move. But just a reminder, each month I have a Miracle Maker workshop, and that so happens to coincide with this episode's release, June 7th, in my Head Trash Anonymous group. If you can't make it, I run these once a month in the Head Trash Anonymous group on Facebook. Basically, miracles are not random events. Miracles are products of deliberate creation, that we can actually create miracles. And I'll be going through this process tonight or once a month. And I'll have this video as well on replay on my YouTube channel, the podcast as well probably. But we can have this control that we are the creators of our reality, but the mind gets in the way. So it's going to be a real interesting night. Hopefully I'll see you in the future there. Well, take good care of yourself. And here's Jenn on the Move. I'm here with Jenn today from Jenn on the Move. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here. So I'm just really curious. Who were you before Jenn on the Move?
It was very different. So I spent over 10 years building a career in finance and business operations. I'm a chartered accountant. So by the time I left the corporate space, I was a global leader in tech. And yeah, I kind of left that to pursue entrepreneurship and to build out Move with Jenn. And it's just been amazing.
There's something about you didn't like about corporate space? Any like aha moments that I need to do something different? This isn't working.
Yeah. So for me, I spent so long just very narrowly focused on kind of like I was really trying to get into the C-suite. That was like my goal. I put all my energy into that. That's where I was going. And as I was reaching it, what happened was I took a pause and it was like, I don't know if this is really what I want anymore. So I'd always kind of in the back of my mind wanted to start building my own business and be an entrepreneur. And for me, it was, something that's always been really important for me is having more agency and freedom in my life. And what I found in the corporate space is, especially being in a global role, I was up at 7 a.m. for meetings. I was, taking 10 p.m. meetings. Like my work was like the driving force of my life.
So were you like stressed out, burned out, and you're like, something just needs to go, something needs to change differently, that my life isn't going the right direction?
Yeah, so there's this pivotal moment. It was, I think, in November of 2021. So this is like, we're like kind of a little bit into COVID at this point. I'm living in Toronto. I'm living in a condo. It pretty much is feeling like a jail cell at this point because like we're not really leaving. I'm with my partner Dave. Our relationship's starting to break down a little bit. And I remember this pivotal moment where, I was having a conversation over Slack with the CEO of the company I was working for. And I remember just like spit out or typed out and it was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I remember the minute that I said that over Slack, it was like I felt that in my gut, like I actually can't do this anymore. Like this is so not aligned with where I want to be in my life.
Hmm.
And that was a big aha moment.
So you actually put that in the Slack and everybody saw that? And
Yeah, I mean, it was a direct message, so luckily it wasn't, in the general group or something like that. Otherwise, there might have been a bit of a panic. But, him and I, we have a really good relationship, been working together a number of years. And so I remember we jumped on a call after and we were just talking about it. And it was just, the company had been bought. There's a lot of changes happening. And I just realized like I either had to adapt to those changes or I couldn't be there anymore. And it just, I just realized this wasn't the direction I needed in my life anymore. And so from there, I started building out a plan to figure out how to leave this, high paying, crazy job and career that I've been building. But it was wild and
So,
terrifying.
yeah, take that leap of faith in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because, like, so when I left, I decided to pursue yoga. And I will say I'm starting to get a little more on the coaching side. So that brings some of my old background in a little bit more. But especially when I was focused purely on the yoga side, I had so many people that I respected and looked up to and admired look at me and be like, what the hell are you doing, Jen? Like, what is this? Like, this is your like side hustle. Like, okay, you're just like, this is like a long yoga retreat you're doing right now?
But yoga is important. Yoga saved my life, I can say. I was a disabled man. I had multiple sclerosis, disabled, but getting out of that. And I remember yoga was pivotal because I had this intuitive voice to say, do yoga. My mental voice said, there's no way you can do yoga because my balance is off. But I remember being like, Warrior 2 was like the best thing for me. If I wasn't in the moment, in focus, I would get tipsy and fall over. So it really forced me
Wow.
to be present and really be
Yeah.
aware where the body is. And
No,
six
keep
months
going.
after doing yoga, then I didn't need the cane anymore.
Wow. Ah, hence Miracle Man. I love it.
Well, yeah, that the whole miracle was just getting rid of multiple sclerosis, bipolar, arthritis, migraines, this whole litany of stuff that I had that I didn't have anymore. But yoga was a key part for me. So when you were doing this yoga, you were saying, I just can't do this yoga path. It's not quite aligned. There's something quite missing because you said you're going to more of the coaching side because that's where your training and prior experience was.
Yeah, and you know what I'm learning is it's not either or for me, it's and. I love yoga. I'm a huge proponent of yoga too. I also believe yoga saved my life. So I always say, November 2011 was like a really interesting month for me because I feel like that's when I started feeling like I was two people. I was this, super ambitious, corporate driven lady. And I also went to my first yoga class. And in my first yoga class, it was the first time that I was ever so focused and my brain wasn't running at a mile a minute. And it
Mm.
was just like, it was like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, this is crazy. Like, I didn't even know I could be like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because yoga forces you to be here in this moment. Like for
That's
me, if
right.
I wasn't here in this moment, I would fall over.
Yeah, exactly, right? And like there's nothing more real than that. And this is it. Like it brings you so present and so like more intentional, I think, with our life and our choices and because what we, learn on the mat, we kind of start taking off the mat. And so for me, it's turned into me kind of bringing in this other side of me is more like me finding that and of being like, I can be Yogi Jen and I can still be ambitious. So I don't have to choose to be one or the other. It's like I do both and I love both. And I think it's that balance of both that really makes people and really myself just feel very balanced.
It's the whole thing in life is really finding that balance that you can be one way or the other, but trying to find that middle way that works for you individually is so important out there.
Yeah,
So
I think so
so
too.
I think too is probably what you're doing with the coaching aspect of with the yoga. They're present, but they might not know who they really are in this process of self-discovery. So is that what you're finding as well?
Yes, that's exactly it. So what I find is like, so the yoga side, the energy work side, this is really about to me, it's about that idea of healing. It's about that idea of first starting to connect and calm your mind. And, like you've experienced, you start getting rid of like the physical ailments, right? So all of a sudden you feel a little better in your body, you're able to move a little bit better. You're starting to be able to ground yourself. And so like physically you just feel, better. And so once you've kind of, gotten to that side, this is where I think the coaching is just magical, because the coaching is really what kind of helps people to find action and then get accountable and start actually moving forward in their journey. And now, depending on the client and depending on how we're coaching, we can really explore and go deep. And like sometimes it's so powerful. Like some of the shifts I've seen just in those coaching sessions is it's wild. So I think that the pair of them is like whew, such a beautiful combination.
It probably makes it more accurate move with Jen that you're getting to present than moving forward.
Yeah, true. Well, you know what? In all honesty, so Move with Jen started as a YouTube channel. So it started like, right when COVID hit, my partner and I decided we are going to do a YouTube channel. And I didn't want it to be just limited to yoga at the time. And so we're like, we'll call it Move with Jen. In hindsight, maybe I would have changed the name, but now it's been going for a couple of years. So anyway, we'll see.
But I think it's good to get people to move because most people don't move. They're usually in a place of inaction because of
Yes.
all the head trash that's going on, cycling and
Oh my
cycling.
gosh. Yes. I love how you call it head trash because that's totally what it is, right?
Yeah, because the way I came up with it, because you always heard like monkey mind and these other things. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't do anything with that. But if it's
Yeah.
trash, it's garbage. You can throw it out. There's something you can physically do with that.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good way to put it. I love that. I might start using that.
Yeah, it's trash. You need to throw it out. It's creating these limitations and stress that we don't need in our life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? One thing that I really love is it's like we're not our thoughts, right? Like if we are our thoughts, like I don't even want to know who I would be because like some of the thoughts that we have are just ridiculous, right? So it's like I think once we can start to differentiate the trash from like what's really ours, it's very powerful.
Yeah, that was the big discovery for me was realizing that I had thoughts, but I wasn't my thoughts.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to discover that I was a very sick man for a very long time. And I was suicidal in my 20s because I took my thoughts as facts.
Yeah. Yeah, and like it's real, right? Because you feel them and they like to a degree like they take over, right? They totally take over.
Right, they absolutely take over. That's why it's really important that you stay present, you stay here in this moment. And then you're doing some things now at your 7-day challenge that I find interesting that it's really, you're calling it about raising your energy, but to me, it's really 7 days of rediscovering yourself.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, you know what? So, I mean, one, I find as soon as you start talking about like discover yourself, people are like, "Oh, I'm not interested in that kind of thing." And one of the things that I've learned through, really starting to connect with energy more, really like starting to understand a lot of this stuff is they are so tied hand in hand because the more aligned I think that we feel with ourselves and we start moving to actually living in alignment, that is like your vibration, your energy just naturally goes up because you're happier, you're more joyful, you're excited about the things that you're getting to do instead of just like, feeling kind of paralyzed, like that you're immobile because you're just like, oh, I have all this crap that I just don't want to do. I feel responsible for, and uh,
Yeah, there's a lot of heaviness. Like when you're doing journaling, you're getting the heaviness down to paper and out. You're getting the head trash removed, if you will, by putting it down on paper and say, that's not me anymore. Or some of these other
totally,
self-discovery processes that you can
yeah.
figure out. And that's a good way to look at it because people don't like to do their own work, self-discovery. That sounds like so much work, so much heaviness. But it's like, oh, energy. I want energy. I want to feel good. I want more of that.
Totally. Also, like I remember when I first started getting into some of this stuff and like, I was in my early 20s at the time. And I remember they're like, you need to have like a better relationship with yourself. And I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, I don't understand. Like, that sounds weird. Like, why would I have space for myself? And so now, like, how many years later, what, like 12 plus years later, it's like, I really believe in that, but it's just, also meeting people where they are.
Right, and it's finding that language. And that's what I do with head trash. It's finding that language I can see. Oh, it's garbage, it's trash. We need to throw that stuff out.
Yeah. Because it
And
resonates, right? Because I'm sure everybody who's listening to this right now is like, oh my gosh, it's totally head trash. Like I can relate to that because like I know how much garbage is in there.
right, so much garbage. So that's why I tell people we need this daily mental shower to clear out
Yes.
the stuff. We take a physical shower, but how much do we work on the mental stuff?
Totally. And you know what? So, like, one of the things that I always come back to, I use this word a lot, is like practice. And it's because I think, like, every single day, like during the day, like as often as we can, it's like coming back to remember that, like, this is a process, right? Like, you have to do all these things all the time, like as much as you can. And it's continually a practice because we keep forgetting them, even if it's the simplest thing, like, even if it's, we know that our mental health is important. It's like if we're not taking steps regularly to practice that, it's we can find ourselves back to being spinning and heavy and full of head trash.
Yeah, that's the game we play, remembering and forgetting.
Yes,
We just have to
exactly.
constantly remember, especially remember who we really are. We get so attached to our identity, our beliefs, our opinions, and it's just most of it is just garbage.
Totally. Well, you know what? Talking about identities, like this is one of the things that I have learned a lot over the last, let's say, 18 months, because, when I left my corporate job, I don't think I fully appreciated how attached to that identity I was. And so when I didn't have it anymore, it was like, oh my gosh, who am I now? Like, what? Like, I don't have this big, powerful status title anymore. Like, what? I don't live in, the epicenter of Canada anymore. Like, what is happening?
But it's all good things. You're probably lighter and freer now. You're not shackled with the identity.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? It's very freeing, I think, when you have that self-awareness to start recognizing, like, oh my gosh, like these are real beliefs that I'm holding. Like, even though I realize that these are stupid or like that they're not good ones, it's like, wow, like I always find it so fascinating and curious because it's like, wow, like these things really hold us back, especially when we're not aware of them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not aware, I think that's where your Release 7 Day is really useful, is making people more aware that they're not aware.
Well, the more we can get more conscious and more intentional, this is where I feel like the magic really starts to happen.
Yeah, that is the magic when you're here in this moment, not burdened down and just free. And actually, it's a way of growth too, of sustainable growth, because as you're practicing, it gets easier and easier and easier.
Hmm.
And hopefully, with these 7 days, they'll find a way to carry them forward. Maybe not journaling every day, but every so often when something comes to them, and just these little practice. What can I do today to feel good, to change the condition?
Yes, that's exactly it.
I think a lot of people don't realize that they're the author of their life. They don't really comprehend this, that they're writing the script.
Yeah, well, this is exactly it, right? This is why I created Move with Jen, and this is kind of like where we're moving forward with it. Is this? It's really about helping people become in the driver's seat, right? Because sometimes I think we get so conditioned by the way we grew up or the people who are around us or where we live that we think that we are stuck, that we can't change those things because it's like, well, I'm just not that kind of person. I didn't grow up in that kind of family. Like, I don't have those kinds of resources. And I think once we start to realize that those are all just really limiting thoughts, and it's valid to have those thoughts, we all have them, but recognizing when it's actually holding us back and how much energy we're holding on to because we just think we can't do it.
Right. That's the thing. You think you can't do it, and it really stops so many people. It's just like, what's that one small thing you can do today that will change everything?
And I love how you talk so much about being present, right? I mean, this is something that I've really noticed in my own life is, I try so hard now to turn off all the notifications on my phone most of the time. And, like when I'm having a conversation like we are, like being able to like be fully embraced in the conversation and 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 have that because I don't there's nothing more powerful than the connection that you can have when you're fully present with another human. It's like this, being able to have genuine connection in a world where most of our, discussions these days are so surface level and, you know, not genuine or connected.
Well, I think a lot more people are more impatient today because of the instant notifications, the buzz of the dinger going off, or whatever it may be. They want that instant gratification, and they don't have that time to go deeper, to realize there's more to this the surface. I always
Hmm.
think of the surface as like the top of the ocean, the constant waves up and down, but the real us is in the depths of the ocean.
That's a beautiful analogy. I love that.
Yeah, that's the way I realize it, that you just want to dive deep. You don't want to get lost in your emotional state, because then you become very reactionary.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I feel
And
that. Well, this is it, right? And I think once we learn that, our emotions are waves, they're like the way that I like to look at emotions now is they're information, they're not good or bad. They just tell us something. So, for example, if you're getting frustrated, you're getting angry, it might be a sign that like you need to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing, or one of your needs just isn't being met right now. And so it's like instead of getting angry for being angry, it's like, why don't we just take a pause and say, like, hey, what is actually happening here? Why am I so angry? Because, like, I'm not an angry person, or I don't think I'm an angry person, or I don't want to be an angry person. So, like, what is really going on here?
Yeah, I think it's much easier to monitor emotional state versus our thoughts, because thoughts are
Totally.
really hard to monitor, but emotional states give that instant feedback. Like, I'm angry, I'm
Yes,
frustrated. What's the story?
exactly. What's the story?
What's the story? And it's probably rooted in head trash somewhere.
It's totally rooted in head trash somewhere, right? It's either rooted in head trash. It's, we're operating in ways that are just not aligned to us. Like maybe we're showing up to a job that we absolutely freaking hate and we do it day in, day out, and we feel, helpless in that. Or it could be as simple as like you just don't feel heard, right? Like you're in a relationship or you're having a conversation with someone and you just don't feel like they're seeing you. You don't feel like they're hearing you. And so one of your basic needs of having like a deep connection is just not being met.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you made. A lot of people are not hearing you. They're usually looking to respond. Once again, at that surface level, they're not deeper. And that's a real interesting practice as well, is just listening without responding.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, how many times do people, and I'm sure, well, I'm willing to bet all of us have done this, where, we're in a conversation with someone and you're like, I already have my next thought right here. When can I say it? When can I jump in? When can I talk about that? Instead of truly just creating that space to just like fully absorb what that person is really saying.
Just to absorb. And sometimes just holding space is enough. If somebody's really going through a lot, they don't want your opinion. They don't want your thoughts. They just want you to vent, if you will.
I think honestly, in a day where we have so much freaking information at our fingertips, I think it's a very rare form when someone's like, I would really like your advice right now. Most of the time it's like, I just want to like say my story. Like, I just want to talk out loud without having someone give me 7 ideas of what I could do to solve my problem. I'm like, I know what I can do to solve the problem. That's not the point.
Right. Absolutely. Sometimes I'm just looking at your title and it's like, maybe it's a move with Jen. We don't want to move randomly, move on purpose with Jen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Totally. Move on purpose.
I think it's probably what you're trying to do with your coaching and giving them the insights is get them to move in a purposeful direction, a certain trajectory that you're trying to
Yeah.
get them on.
Yeah, and I think it's just about, again, to me, it's really about finding that fulfillment, finding out like, what are the things that we really want more of in our life. I think all of us really want the same things, which are probably to be happier more, to laugh more, to like connect with our loved ones at a deeper level, to like not feel so stressed all the time. And so I think that the way that looks is a little bit different to each person. And so it's just about coming back to our beliefs, right? All the trash that's up here that tells us we don't deserve that. We're not worthy of that. You shouldn't have that.
Absolutely. So, what's some of the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? If you feel somebody's really scattered, really falling apart, how do you get them into this moment and out of the story? Like, how do you release them from all this baggage, all this stuff that they're going through? So, I'm sure you read people that are just really pulling their hair out. They don't know where to begin.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is to me where the magic of yoga comes in because I think when we have so much energy coming up here and we are just feeling in this state of scatteredness, of chaos, right? I think getting into the body becomes really important because typically what happens is we almost create this separation, which is so easy in this world because, like, well, we're glued to this thing, our phones, and to the computer. And so, like, we live like a whole world in our head without having to say anything like verbally out loud or to be in our bodies. And so to me, I found restorative yoga incredibly powerful for this. It's so healing. Yin yoga and like I call it mindful movement. It's kind of like a combination of vinyasa flow and just like more movement based yoga. And I find just depending on the level of chaos that's happening, the more movement they need. So it's like if they're super anxious, it's like you need to move like faster because the first thing is like it's painful and agitating and horrible to just stay still.
Right, because stay still just builds more energy. So you're trying to look to displace that energy or just get out of the energy of chaos.
Yeah, and I think it's a journey, right? So I think it's like, a lot of people will start with, let's say, vinyasa flow because it's fast paced, it's movement, it's, getting into the body, it's some people hold it for 5 breaths, 10 breaths, one breath, whatever. And then I think, over time, as we start removing a bit of that, trash, we start kind of starting to get a little bit more grounded. We can, hold the pose for 5 breaths without wanting to punch someone, then it's like, okay, like maybe we can bring them to yin, yin where we're going to hold the pose for 2 minutes or, you know, 8 minutes and start kind of building this connection now between the mind and body. And then over time, and also depending on how exhausted they are, then I find restorative yoga is really beautiful because we start really getting a little slower.
Yeah, when I began, I found yin very useful, especially when I was dealing with multiple sclerosis. The yin was really,
Yes.
really good for the muscles, stretch them out.
Yeah. Oh, I bet they were probably so good for that because it's like, because it causes that stress. So it like allows that release to happen in your body so that you can actually move better, right?
Right, yeah. It was very important to do that, was to just relax and just be here.
Yeah. And probably what's so beautiful too with yin with multiple sclerosis is because I bet you if you were doing like a faster pace class, maybe it might be harder to keep up or, whatever. Whereas like yin, it's like you still have enough time to kind of go in the pose, out of the pose, but then also have that moment to drop in and do the whole, oh my gosh, my body is hurting. Oh my gosh, my mind is screaming. You're doing this balance while you're in the pose.
Yeah, I did mostly vinyasa about once or twice a week yin, but most of it was vinyasa, a lot of movement.
Yeah, and how many times so were you practicing, like, every day, or how did that look for you?
Usually I did about, I think when I first began, it was probably like every other day I was doing it
Yeah.
because I had this deep knowing that it was time to go do yoga. My mom was
Wow.
screaming protest, but I just followed this intuitive, it's time for yoga.
Yeah, and she was screaming, p was she not very happy you were gonna practice yoga?
Well, the mind had all this kind of stories. You can't do yoga, your balance is terrible, and
Yeah.
all this kind of nonsense. And I ignored it because I saw thoughts as thoughts and not as me. They were
Yeah.
separate than me.
And then I think through all that practice, you were like, "Oh my gosh, like, I can move better than I think. My balance, isn't great, but if I focus, it's getting better."
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I mean. 6 months later, no more cane. It was just like gone.
that's that's remarkable.
Yeah. And it's just weird now not having MS, not having
Mhm.
anything is just weird.
Wow. Yeah, you're probably like, "What?" Super, like, complete miracle man.
Yeah, it's just a little surreal at time when I think back and I see people that are still struggling a lot. And I'm like, you're overcomplicating things. Slow it down
Totally.
one step at a time.
Well, you know what? I just find this is one of the things that I don't know. It's a bit of a bone with me. Is like there's so many amazing Eastern practices, right? Like, and us getting into our body, like there's so much more knowledge and research around that we need to be getting into our bodies, and we need to be eating better food, and all of these things really matter for our health. But I think a lot of us have these beliefs that actually the medical doctors, our Western medicine, is going to heal us with the pills and with all these things. And, I see this all the time where it's like, no, 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 I don't need to do that yoga thing. Like I've got my medication. No, no, I don't need to do that because the doctor says I'm fine. And I'm
Right.
like, but you feel terrible. Like, why wouldn't you just try it?
Well, because it's hard to move out of the comfort zone.
Yeah,
It's very
totally.
hard. I mean, I was seeing my psychiatrist for, nearly 20 years, and he never said once to me to do meditation. He never
Yeah,
once said do meditation, do
yeah.
yoga. It was never anything like that. It was
Hmm.
usually chasing thoughts with more thoughts.
Totally, totally. This is it, right? I remember I was getting these very, very severe panic attacks. I thought I was going into anaphylactic shock. I found myself in the ER many times. I remember my doctor was like, yeah, like it's anxiety. So like we can put you on anti-anxiety meds. And I'm like, I'm like 25. Like, I'm not going on anti-anxiety meds. Like, I'm way too young for this. And anyways, so yeah, so I totally relate to that. It's like, there's so many more natural ways that we can handle some of this stuff, but I just think not everybody talks about them.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing today. We have this internet that I didn't have when I was growing up. There was no real source of information, really that you can go to. You didn't hear people talk about meditation for anxiety or anything like that. And they've actually done studies that shows that meditation removes psoriasis.
Wow.
But how many doctors, tell you, oh, you got psoriasis, here's medicine, or you can meditate.
Well, because this is it. I mean, some of the books that are coming out now, like Body Keeps Score, and I'm trying to think. I know there's a couple other ones, but there's so much like more dialogue now about how this energy that we have, if we're not moving through our emotions, if we're not if we're constantly feeling that mental trash happening and we're not doing anything about it, it starts to manifest in our body. And it can show up as chronic illness. It can show up as shoulder like issue. It can show up as, I mean, so many different things. And so it's like when we start to realize that, you start to realize that if we can understand our energy a bit better and we can utilize practices like yoga that moves the energy, meditation that helps us get calm and also helps with the energy, like a lot of it actually comes to an energetic level, which is hard to understand, but it's wild.
Yeah, we're energetic beings. Ultimately we are. You can pull out a quantum, an electron microscope and you won't see the body anymore. You'll just see particles.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think it's really important body keep score because I can go to anybody with an autoimmune disease and see that
Hmm.
they have some kind of criticism or something about them they don't like. That's
Totally.
that's everybody with autoimmune disease. Why is the body attacking itself? Because you're physically, mentally attacking the body. So it gets this
Yeah.
really vicious loop. Yeah, so I had three autoimmune diseases. They're all gone because I stopped believing the nonsense.
Yeah. Wow. That's just incredible. And how long did it take you to kind of get to the point that you're in now?
I'm one of the rare ones. I had self-realization in 2 weeks.
Wow. So you did this like massive quantum leap.
Yeah, as soon as I saw like I had because I was like when I first discovered meditation, I just read about it. I never had a teacher. I just read about meditation. Meditation brings inner peace. I'm like,
Hmm.
I need inner peace. But so when I started meditation, because there's no real instructions, I thought meditation meant you stop thinking. So the mind would start thinking and be like, stop thinking. Mind thinking, stop thinking. And I was like, wait a second, I'm chasing thoughts with more thoughts. If I'm
Hmm.
aware of these thoughts, then I'm not my thoughts. So who
Yeah.
am I?
Whoa. Yeah. And that goes deep.
Yeah. So I knew myself then I just had this really deep knowing, that who I really am is spirit, soul, whatever you wish to call it. And I simply knew that all was well, all sense of fear about health was simply gone. And it was gone. And it took me but I was on so much medication. It took me nearly 14 months to get off all the medication I was on.
I bet.
But I knew the healing was done basically that night. And it was just a matter of the body catching up. And it was like this
Yeah.
intuitive voice came on, just to do this, do that, and I just followed that intuitive voice.
That's beautiful. And what did your doctors think? They're probably like, what is happening?
Well, that's the thing, I canceled most of my doctor's appointments. I just canceled my last neurologist appointment, and he examined me, questioned me for 45 minutes, trying to quantify what I did. And he could not explain it in his Western medicine. There was nothing in it that
Explanation.
lined up. Yeah, there was nothing because he even looked at my scans and my blood results, and it made no sense to him. It wasn't until I
Hmm.
ran into Dr. Gabor Mate at a conference. He's a big Canadian trauma doctor, and he talks about this mind-body connection and things like that. And I was talking to him. He asked me some questions, and he basically summed it up like, "Oh, you stop believing your mind."
Wow.
And that's where I'm saying it's really simple. We can really break it down very simple. So I just feel this complexity out there. I'm like, why are you making it so difficult? Because
Hmm.
my practice was I began with sitting for 5 minutes a day. I had self-realization sitting for 5 minutes a day for 2 weeks. It
Well, this
wasn't
is it.
complex.
This is why I think it's so amazing, right? I think when people think about these tools, they're like, well, I got to go to an ashram. I got to spend 2 weeks and just meditate all day for 2 weeks. And like you're saying, 2 weeks, 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes was enough to be powerful and to have that shift. Like it only takes 5 minutes.
Right, because people have all this head trash that I need the guru, I need to do this, and all these ritual and
Mm-hmm.
routines. And I really see that some of the spiritual people really have some ingrained belief systems. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you're making it too complex. Throw everything
Totally.
out and just sit there for five
Yeah.
minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, just being present.
Yes, exactly.
Once you're present, then that's all that matters. That's where all your power is in this moment.
Totally. Oh, I love that. What a beautiful story.
That's one of the things I really teach, with my head trash. It's really easy to get out of if you want to get out of it. A lot of people don't want to get out of the head trash. It's too comfortable.
Yeah, totally. Because that work is hard, right? To realize, like, oh my gosh, I have been holding myself back for how long? It's a painful pill to swallow, right?
Right. It is a painful pill. And people, once again, we talk about attachment to identity
Mm-hmm.
and multiple sclerosis, some of these really chronic illnesses, you really have a strong identity with that. Like nobody depends on me, anything. I'm not responsible for anything. People open doors for me. Nothing's expected of me. And you get really ingrained into these stories. And you
Mm-hmm.
have to strip that identity out and say, no, that's not who I am.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Like, this isn't who I am. This isn't who I want to be. And giving yourself permission to move away from that.
And that's the thing, permission. So, Jen, if people wanted to get in contact with you, how could they reach out? And
Totally. So, I mean, one, I'm like so open and whatever. So, like, people DM me all the time, like direct message me. I'm on Instagram. That's probably the place that I'm the most active. So, it's Move a Jen, 3 N's. I'm also on Facebook. I got a website. It's like not the most updated. Hopefully, that'll shift. But I do a weekly community coffee chat. It's a free Zoom. It's a great place to just connect with community. It's every Thursday. People kind of just jump on. For me, this is a call that is really about serving. And so it's just whatever the community wants is what we do. So every week there's typically a new topic. One week we actually did breath work. So it just kind of depends on the week. Yesterday we talked about what is your higher power? What is God? It was a pretty interesting conversation. A few weeks before, it was more about, fear of success, fear of failure. So that would be a great place if people are looking for a bit more community and maybe not really sure where to start.
yeah, it might be a good idea. Just jump into the community and see what's going on. Because I think that fear is such a big, big obstacle for many people. The fear of change is,
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to everything that we've been talking about with the belief systems, with the head trash, and with you know, I think sometimes it's the acceptance of like, wow, I actually had the power to change this the whole time and being able to accept that and reconcile that within ourselves.
yeah, that's really important, though. A lot of people will beat themselves up like I lived this way for so long and I could have
Mm-hmm.
changed it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And I
That's
didn't know
it.
that was even possible, because we're always told these stories that you're stuck with this forever. If you get
Yeah.
a terminal, a label, if you will, that you're bipolar, that's the rest of your life, multiple sclerosis, whatever it may be, it's a lifetime sentence, if you will, for most people, and they accept that as their truth. And it's simply
Yes.
not their truth.
And you were such a testament to that, right? I mean, you've taken these three things that, people with one of these things already is typically in not the best state. And you've had three and you're like, yeah, that's not my story. Sorry.
Now, I actually had 8 conditions.
8. Oh my gosh. Jeez, Sam. Amazing.
I was a walking train wreck.
And look at you now.
And now it's just slow it down, move. I really like that analogy. If you're really angry, frustrated, you need to move. You need to
Mm-hmm.
get rid of that energy, dispel it some way. And that
Mm-hmm.
way is reach out to Jen. She'll get you some movements to help center and ground that energy to get you to present. From presence, everything is possible. Thanks for your time, Jen.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. And thanks everybody who's been listening and sticking around.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wellness Wednesdays with Sam, the Miracle Man. And we hope you'll continue to discover the power of resilience and the steps we can all take to create our own miracles while on our bumpy path to well-being. But just remember, be present, find clarity, and also subscribe so we can all continue to share this life-changing journey together. See you next Wednesday.